Welcome back to another MobileSentrix tips and tricks. My name is Derek, and today I'm going to be showing you my way of replacing a damaged connector and a charge port on an iPad. Let's get into the video. We'll clamp up the board, take off the stickers. I'm going to come in with some hot air below, around 350 to 400 degrees Celsius, with medium airflow. We'll pick off the adhesive, kind of holds the flex to the bottom of the board here. And now using the heat through the board, we're going to pull off the ZIF connector, and then carefully push down on the flex cable and let gravity kind of naturally pull the flex off without tearing any of the pads. Just like that. Alright, there's the connector and the old charge port. Damaged. Let's throw that away. You can see here on the back, no pulled pads. We'll add some flux and some 183 solder, kind of fluff up all of these pads so that we can put a new connector on. Make sure I have enough solder on each one of those joints. We'll clean off the flux, add some new flux. We'll get our new connector out. Now this connector has two different types of plastic. The flap is a weaker plastic, so it'll melt under temperature. So for that reason, I will be again heating this from below. And you want to do this before you do the charge port, otherwise you might end up melting the solder that you use to attach the charge port. So if you ever have to replace this connector, you're pretty much guaranteed to having to replace the charge port as well, because there's no real good way to put this on without singeing the plastic unless you heat it from below. So we'll come in from below now that I've lined it up with my tweezers, and I'm going to let the solder kind of, as it melts, it's going to kind of create surface tension on the pins and the legs. It'll kind of pull it down, but by agitating it, by nudging it with the tweezers, it's going to allow for a much stronger joint between the solder and the pins, allowing it to sink and sit down on the actual surface of the board. You can see as I tap it, it really sucks it down. And that's kind of what I'm going for here. But once I'm satisfied with the alignment, we'll pull the heat away. So right there looks almost good, right there. We'll pull the heat away, let it cool down. Now let's flip it over now that it's cooled down. Let's take a look at that charge port. So we're going to use again some 183 solder paste. You could go up to 217 if you want. It's just a little harder to work with, but it will be a little bit more secure. The 183 tends to do the trick for most solder jobs. So we'll smear that out here on these pads so that we can fluff them up to have a decent amount of solder on each one of the pads. Now this isn't necessary, but it definitely helps improve the amount of time it takes to do it. So once I've gotten all the pads nice and ready, we'll clean off the flux with some isopropyl alcohol and a clean room wipe. I'm also going to be removing any of the leftover adhesive that is on the board. Once clean, we'll take some flux and put it on there, and I'm going to use my finger and kind of smear it around, getting an even coating. And then I want to come in and clean this edge because there's a little bit of adhesive on the new flex cable that we'll want to give a best chance of grabbing if we clean that up. So we'll line up the edges, and there's a really nice little window here that lines up with the gold square. So if we line everything up properly, we will be able to get the solder to flow nicely through each one of those little holes on the pads. So now that I've got that top corner lined up, I'm going to add some flux. And we'll come in with our soldering iron. And I'm going to go and touch on these pads real quick. And what will happen is I'll be able to pull some of the solder up through each one of these pads. And it kind of anchors this area, so you can see they're nice and covered there. We'll move down to the other side and do the same thing. Then we'll carefully go over each one of the pads, try to pull as much of that solder that's down on the board up through those holes, getting the flex cable as close as it possibly can to the actual board. Once I've done that and I'm satisfied, I'm going to go ahead and add some extra solder, add some more 183 to the pads, go around and get them to be nice fluffy pillows. This will ensure that each one of the joints is nice and solid. So add some extra flux to help really clean this up, and you can see there how good each one of these joints looks. And we'll add some isopropyl alcohol with a clean room wipe, clean it up, get rid of all of that extra solder and flux, leaving a nice surface for us to put the sticker back on. Here's a closer look at the connector. You can see if we zoom down on in here that the solder has kind of gone up the sides of those pins. And each one, it's definitely making solid contact with the bottom of the pins. And here on the back, those legs, there's plenty of solder holding onto the legs as well. And each one of those pins looks really good. Alright, now for the last step, we're going to test it. I've got my TriStar tester here. We'll turn it on. I'll plug it in. It says device connected. We'll hit quick test and it says the port is okay, and then the TriStar passes as well. Here I have cold press glue. I'm going to put it here on the bottom, kind of where Apple had originally done it, to help really secure the flex cable. This step isn't necessary, but it's definitely an added touch. We'll put the stickers back, protecting the solder joints from the frame. And we'll put back the last sticker, and we'll be good to reinstall this back in the frame. So as you can see, replacing the charge port and the connector isn't all too complicated, and having the ability to do this will definitely help you if you run into these issues. Leave comments below if you have any questions. Thanks a ton for watching. We'll see you in the next video.